During the time of Joel the prophet, those of you who are familiar with your Old Testament may remember that there was a plague came over the people of Israel. And it was a plague of locusts. And these locusts, millions upon millions of them, ravished the land of Israel, turning it into just a vast wasteland of destruction. And it was a terrible, terrible experience for the people of Israel to go through. And Joel spoke to that plague with these words. He said to Israel, "Mourn like a bride left alone at the altar, a bride dressed in a forlorn sack instead of her wedding gown. All our offerings, all our grain and wine are cut off, swallowed by the locusts. No one has anything to bring into the Lord's house." And notice this part, no one even has reason to come. The feelings that the Israelites were experiencing are very familiar to what a lot of church-going Christians are experiencing now. Have you felt in your heart the poignancy of those words? No one has anything to bring into the Lord's house. No one even has reason to come. So many of you have been so involved in the ministries at First Baptist. It must be a strange feeling for so many of us not to have a lot of church ministries that we are involved in. What do we do with that? What do we do with this sudden break in activity, in ministry, in service that we love and we feel called to? How do we cope in the midst of that? I want to share with you a short but very poignant story that a pastor told. His name's Ben Patterson, and he tells this story. He says the Lord taught him an important lesson, and it came by way of 2 ruptured lumbar discs. The doctor prescribed 6 weeks of total rest. The horrible pain prevented me from lying in bed. Those weeks were spent on my back on the floor. My eyes didn't focus well due to the painkillers and the muscle relaxants, so I could scarcely read. I was of no use to the church, I thought. So I asked my wife to bring me the pictorial directory. I decided I'd pray for every member every day. It took me nearly 2 hours a day. There was no great piety involved. Mainly, I was bored and frustrated. But towards the end of my convalescence, I said to the Lord, "You know, these times of prayer have become so sweet. It's too bad I don't have time to do this when I'm at work." And Ben Patterson said the Lord responded, and he said to him, "Stupid," in a very pleasant voice. Now, I've heard the Lord speaking to me. I've never heard him call me stupid, although I'm sure he's thought it on occasion. But he said to Ben, "Stupid, you have the same 24 hours each day when you're well. The trouble with you, Ben, is when you're well, you think you're in charge. When you're sick, you know you're not." This time of forced isolation is a time to remind ourselves of a number of things. Number one, that we are not in charge, that God's in charge. And number two, it's a reminder of the importance of prayer, that even in the midst of this pandemic, we can still pray. And that is the single most important thing that we can do, to pray, to pray, to pray. And I want to encourage you to spend some of the times that you've been involved in ministry in prayer. And third, when we come out on the other side of this pandemic, and we will, continue to pray. Remember that the time we spend in prayer during the pandemic, it's just as important after it's all done. So let me encourage you to remain focused on the Lord. Take some enjoyment from the break from activity, if you're able to do that, and focus on prayer now and later.